There are many stretches that are recommended for back pain and sciatica and herniated discs. And I know that many people, when they come into our program, they're already doing specific therapies. And one of the questions that comes up a lot is, when should we do the piriformis stretch? Somebody told me I have piriformis syndrome. When do I do the stretch? So this is important. This is one of those fundamentals as to why you have back pain. And if you understand why you have back pain, you are more likely to do what's necessary to eliminate it. So the piriformis comes up a lot. And if you're currently going through our program, you need to really pay attention here, because you might be doing the piriformis stretch too soon, or maybe not even necessary for you because you're in extension bias. Extension bias patients should not do the piriformis stretch, and I'll explain why. 24 vertebrae between the head and the hips, and we know in between each vertebrae there is a disc, and the disc is very often what causes you all the back trouble. What we know is the annulus can tear, and then when it tears, any motion patterns over that tear can aggravate it and perpetuate it and make it worse. And over time, what can happen is the disc can start to bulge, and slowly it'll start to push its way out to turn into a herniation. This is why you have back pain. We live in a culture where we sit too much. We sit a lot. Zina. Sorry, it's my dog. We sit a lot. And when we sit a lot, what happens is our hip flexors get tight. And when our hip flexors get tight, what it does is it starts to compromise our glutes. And it leads to what's called lower cross syndrome. So we know hip flexors get tight. The muscle that does the opposite activity gets loose or turned off or inhibited, causing glute amnesia. So tight hip flexors causes the glutes to slowly turn off. It's called reciprocal inhibition. We've talked about that. Piriformis is part of this. We're getting there. So as I lift up my arm, what happens is my bicep gets tight and my tricep starts to relax. As it starts to relax, it allows motion around the joint. Same thing happens with the glutes. It's called reciprocal inhibition. Hip flexors get tight, glutes turn off. You get a decrease the neural drive. So really it's all about this muscle here, which is the hip flexor, which then slowly starts to turn off the glute. Now, the one thing about the glute is it is good for extension. It's the strongest muscle in your body. It's important for squats and all those different things that we've ever talked about. Underneath the glute, so here's the glute, underneath the glute is the piriformis. When you get activation of the hip flexors, they get too tight, glute turns off, piriformis starts to do the work of the glute. You can see it's a very small muscle. It's not designed to do the work of the glute. Because it's not designed to do the work of the glute, it tends to get very, very, very tight with specific activities that require the glute, but the glute's not there to work it. Same thing with the hamstrings. We've talked about the hamstrings. And that tight piriformis is attributed to back pain. Oh, your piriformis is tight, you have back pain. Or your piriformis is tight and now you have sciatica, because the sciatic nerve passes right by the piriformis. But what you have is you have an overactive piriformis because the glute is turned off. When you have glute amnesia, it results in poor motion habits or poor motion patterns on the spine, because the glutes aren't there to help you do the hip hinge, which then leads to a spine bender. But also what it does is it causes the piriformis to get tighter and the hamstring to get tighter. So how do you solve this? Well, if you do the piriformis stretch, which is basically what this gentleman is doing here, he's laying on his back and then he's pulling his knee forward. Now, what happens is as you pull that knee forward, the spine does what? It starts to flex. And as it starts to flex, what can happen? You can start to aggravate the tear in the annulus. There are very specific There's a specific time for each event to solve the back pain. Resolving the issues in the hips, the tight hip flexors, tight hamstrings, tight piriformis is step 4. Okay? If you're in the beginning up here where we're trying to resolve the aggravation to the disc and we're going right to start to activate, to stretch the piriformis, you're not going to solve the problem. Very often you're going to get more aggravated. You're going to aggravate the disc because as you're pulling that knee forward, the pelvis is doing this. When the pelvis does this, it aggravates the disc. And then you have more pain. A lot of times, people come into the program and they're doing certain exercises that their physical therapist gave them that didn't really help, but they continue to do it because sometimes they like doing it or they think they're doing the right thing, but then you're doing it too soon. You're doing it up here. Okay, first goal is to restore normal motion patterns. Bend with the hips, the hip hinge. Don't bend with your spine. Create stability in the core. When you create the stability here, it prevents the motion on the spine. That's why we work the core and the stability. And then you have to have endurance. You have to have the ability to hold that for a while. And then you restore the motion. And as you restore the motion, we start to activate the glutes. Everybody that goes to the program, anybody that has back pain has to activate the glutes. Now, you're not necessarily doing squats with weights on your shoulder. Sometimes you can do squats up against a wall. Have the wall support you. We walk you through all this. But as you activate that glute, what happens to the piriformis? It relaxes. Why does it relax? Because it's not doing the work of the glute. The glute is doing the work of the glute. It helps everything calm down. So it's not uncommon if you have glute amnesia and you activate your glutes, your hamstrings get looser. You don't have to stretch your hamstrings. Your piriformis gets looser. Sometimes the very process of activating the glutes allows the hip, the piriformis, the iliopsoas muscle to get looser, the hip flexor. Restore function to the muscles, everything is better. That's the key to the program. Restore the motion. Reactivate healthy movement, stability. It's the cycle. Continue the process. Healthy movement comes from strong glutes. Strong glutes allow for the hips to restore, so the whole thing works together. That's the key. That's why I say pain relief is weakness leaving the body. Where's the weakness? We're calling this weakness in the glutes, although everybody's got weakness in their glutes because we sit too much. It's a serious, serious problem. Activate the glute and you will get better. Boom. That's it. That's how it works. Fundamentals. Move well. Reactivate muscles. Get everything working the way it should. Your life will get better. You do not have to live in back pain. You can get out. Pain relief is weakness leaving the body.